You ever wonder why some men walk into a room and everything slows down? No flexing, no bragging, no small talk, just presence like they know something the rest of the world doesn't. That's not luck. That's not charm. That's not a vibe. It's stillness. And it's the most dangerous form of power a man can carry. Because when you become still, truly still, you stop chasing and everything starts chasing you. Want to know why she's losing interest even when you say all the right things? Want to know why life feels out of control, no matter how hard you grind? This is the video you didn't know you needed. Comment "Stillness is power" if you're ready to build what most men will never understand. We live in a time where men are being pulled in 1,000 directions. Distracted, exhausted, angry, confused, chasing women, chasing validation, chasing success. But few stop and ask the real question: what draws all those things to you? Not your looks, not your money, not your words. It's your depth. It's your ability to remain grounded in a world that's constantly testing your balance. And if you don't learn how to build this, every interaction, every relationship, every opportunity will slip right through your hands. That's why I created the Stoic Relationship Blueprint ebook for men. It's not just an ebook, it's the quiet playbook of the rarest men, the men who lead relationships without ever raising their voice. The blueprint for building long-term loyalty, respect, and irresistible pull without chasing. The men who've read it are transforming not just in dating, but in how they walk through life. But this knowledge, it's not for everyone. And to protect its power, it won't stay available to the public for long. 1. You can't fake calm. You can wear the best watch in the room. You can drive the fastest car. You can memorize every clever line from every book on how to be high value. But when life knocks on your door at midnight with a problem that shakes the walls of your confidence, and she's looking at you, searching your eyes for something steady to hold on to, you'll learn quickly that you can't fake calm. Calm isn't found in things. It isn't in your flex. It's not in your posture. It's in your soul. It's in your breath. It's in your still, controlled presence. When everything feels like it's crumbling, every man reaches a breaking point where he either exposes the cracks in his foundation or proves that his roots go deep. And women, intuitively, emotionally, are drawn not to the man who claims he's unshakable, but to the man who has earned that title through pain, through patience, and through persistence. You can't borrow this, you can't copy this, because your soul will tell on you every time you pretend to be him without having become him. Think back to that argument where you raised your voice not because she deserved it, but because you lost yourself. Think back to that opportunity you fumbled because you doubted whether you were ready for it. Think back to that night you stared at your ceiling, wondering why you keep attracting disrespect, confusion, chaos. It's not that life is targeting you. It's that you haven't become grounded enough to stop being moved. And you will be moved by her emotions, by pressure, by temptation, until your mind and body are so in tune they can no longer be separated. Do you understand what happens when a man finally stops letting the world dictate his worth? When he doesn't chase, not because he doesn't care, but because he's already chosen himself. When he no longer explains himself, not out of arrogance, but because his energy already answers the question before it's asked. That man can walk through rejection, betrayal, loss, and still keep his chin high, not because he's numb, but because he's focused, because he's built from something stronger than approval. And if you haven't built that yet, you're not late, but you are vulnerable. Vulnerable to manipulation, to distraction, to women who pretend to respect you until they find out they can move you with a single sigh, to opportunities that vanish the moment you hesitate. So, how do you stop faking calm and start living from it? You start waking up before the world does. You train your body until pain becomes background noise. You sit in discomfort without complaining. You journal every evening and wrestle your mind onto the page. You set boundaries with yourself, not just others. You make discomfort your training ground, not something you run from. You look her in the eye when she tests you, and you don't flinch, not to dominate her, but to show her there's something inside you more stable than whatever chaos she brings. And that kind of man becomes rare. And what is rare becomes desired, because real calm doesn't raise its voice, it doesn't chase, it doesn't prove. It simply exists, and everything around it begins to orbit its strength. Number 2, silent men speak loudest. There's a different kind of volume the world isn't used to. It's not in shouting, it's not in explaining, it's not in filling space. It's the presence of a man who walks into the room and says absolutely nothing. And still, every person feels the air change. He isn't trying to impress. He isn't scanning for validation. He isn't desperate to be seen, because he truly knows that when a man carries real weight inside him, he doesn't need to announce it. His stillness, his direction, his conviction are so undeniable that people instinctively listen even before he opens his mouth. Think about it. Think about the last time someone walked past you and you just knew without a word that he wasn't ordinary. Maybe it was the way he carried himself. Maybe it was his focus, his calm, his total absence of approval-seeking behavior. That wasn't luck. That wasn't status. That was a man who has spent years in the shadows, building himself until he no longer needed to demand respect. He commanded it by his essence alone. And you feel it. You know, when you're in the presence of a man who doesn't care if you agree with him because his truth isn't up for debate, that man can sit quietly in a room and make everyone uncomfortable, not because he's aggressive, but because he's unapologetically himself. In a culture obsessed with oversharing, overposting, overtalking, he chooses to guard his energy. He chooses to speak only when it builds, not when it distracts. He speaks slowly with pauses, not to manipulate, but because his words have weight, and weight moves differently. Do you want to become that man? Then stop filling space to feel worthy. Stop chasing reactions. Stop using conversation as a weapon to gain attention. Your voice becomes powerful when it no longer carries desperation. Your body language becomes magnetic when it no longer signals neediness. Your energy becomes a gravitational pull when you've done the inner work to live in alignment. Speak with your presence before you ever speak with your voice. And the way you build that presence, you take responsibility for every word you say. You stop gossiping, you stop lying, you stop explaining yourself every time someone questions you. You let your standards speak before your voice does. You hold eye contact and let people feel your depth. Not because you're trying to intimidate, but because you faced your shadows and now they work for you, not against you. Women don't crave words. They crave certainty. They crave the man who doesn't stumble over his truth, who doesn't flinch when she throws a test his way. They crave the man whose silence says, I've already decided who I am. And once you become that, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried to be, but because you dared to build what most men don't even know they're missing. So speak less, mean more, and remember, the loudest room is often led by the quietest man. Number 3, composure is her emotional trigger. She doesn't fall in love with your ambition. She doesn't commit because of your looks or your hustle or the way you sound when you talk about your plans. What moves her deeper than attraction, what roots her in loyalty is what she feels when everything falls apart and she watches you hold it together without needing to dominate, without needing to run, without collapsing into confusion. Her soul is wired not for perfection but for clarity. She's biologically tuned to seek stability in the face of emotional chaos. And when she tests you, yes, tests, because every woman with depth will. She's not looking for you to win an argument or fix her feelings. She's trying to sense if you can carry the pressure of her reality without flinching. That's why you can be a man with charm, intelligence, and even resources, but still lose her. Because in a split second of reactive weakness, of defending instead of directing, of pleading instead of pausing, you confirmed what she feared. That your strength is situational, not foundational. So she pulls back. She questions. She stirs tension not to destroy you, but to see if your roots are real. And in those moments when you start raising your voice, when your breathing changes, when your words stumble because you're afraid of what she might do or say or think, you're not leading anymore. You're chasing. And women don't stay where they feel they're the ones leading your reactions. They want to feel you steady when they're overwhelmed. They want to feel your direction when they've lost their own. They want to surrender, not out of weakness, but because your presence gives them the safety to soften. But here's the uncomfortable truth most men won't admit. We've been taught to speak when we should listen, to solve when we should understand, to panic when we should pause. And until you unlearn that, you'll keep attracting chaos instead of connection. She's not against you. She's looking for something in you that's unshakable, something that doesn't come from manipulation or status or sweet talk. It comes from depth, from a man who spent time with his thoughts, who's learned to navigate emotional weight without offloading it onto others. It's in the man who can witness her emotions, tears, fears, resistance, and stay grounded. Not because he's trying to win, but because he knows who he is without needing her validation. And that kind of composure, that poise under pressure, that restraint rooted in certainty, it doesn't attract her, it disarms her. It brings down her walls, because now she sees you not as another man pretending to be solid, but as the one who actually is. And to build this, you must go where most men don't, into the discomfort, into the triggers, into the places where you've always reacted. And you must learn to breathe, to slow, to watch, to lead with your steadiness instead of your need to be, right? Because in the end, the men who truly lead aren't the ones who say the most, but the ones who hold the most without crumbling. Number 4, no reaction equals maximum control. Every moment you react without control, you leak power. Every text you send out of fear, every argument you dive into without clarity, every emotion you let dictate your words, you give up ground. Not just with women, with life, with business, with yourself. Because reaction is the opposite of leadership. It's the declaration that something outside you is stronger than what's inside you. And in today's world where everything is engineered to provoke you, ads pulling on your insecurities, opinions baiting your pride, people pressing your buttons just to see what you'll do, the rarest men are those who don't bite, who don't flinch, who don't respond just to feel heard. Because what you'll discover if you've ever sat through a test of patience and chosen poise instead of panic is that nothing confuses those trying to control you more than a man who doesn't play their game. And she feels this too. She might not say it, she might not admit it, but deep inside, when you stay calm instead of escalating, when you choose direction over drama, when you walk away from disrespect without saying a word, something clicks, respect deepens, curiosity grows, and what's more, you begin to respect yourself in ways you never have before. You start realizing that your attention is currency, and where you spend it defines your destiny. You see that not every provocation deserves a paragraph. Not every trigger needs a reaction. Some things are tests, and the ones who pass are those who can see beyond the moment. But here's where most men get stuck. They confuse detachment with weakness. They think walking away means losing. They think choosing not to argue means they weren't strong enough to defend their truth. That's wrong. Real strength isn't shown in yelling louder. It's shown in knowing you don't need to. It's in the pause, in the glance, in the silence that follows, when someone tries to push you and you don't move because you know what they're doing, and more importantly, you know who you are, and in that moment, you become untouchable, not because you're avoiding life, but because you've mastered it. So the next time you feel yourself wanting to fire back, to chase, to defend, stop. Ask yourself, does this serve who I'm becoming? If it doesn't, let it go. If it drains you, distance yourself, because every time you choose not to react, you reinforce your direction. You prove to yourself that your mission matters more than being right, and that over time turns you into the kind of man everyone watches, not because you entertain, but because you endure, because you hold your frame not for applause, but because you've trained too long and lost too much to ever give it up again. Number 5, emotional control equals leadership. There is a point in every man's life when he looks around at the chaos, his relationship slipping, his business on the edge, his thoughts racing at midnight, and realizes that the world will not slow down for him. He must become stronger than the pressure or get crushed beneath it. And it's in that moment, not when he's on top, not when she loves him, not when everything is working, but when the walls are closing in, that a man discovers the truth. Leadership is not about titles. It's not about being the loudest in the room. It's not about managing others. Leadership is about managing yourself when everything in you wants to lose control. It's when a woman is spiraling, and instead of reacting to her energy, you center her by refusing to break. It's when business fails and you don't curse the world, you adapt. It's when your friends betray you and you don't retaliate with petty revenge. You move in silence and upgrade your standards, because emotional control is not about suppressing what you feel. It's about learning how to direct it with purpose. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to walk away and when to stand your ground. And here's the hardest part for most men. This kind of control doesn't come naturally. You're not born with it. You have to build it in the shadows. You have to sit with every part of yourself you've been running from. The anger, the disappointment, the regret, and you have to face it without blaming anyone else. You have to study your own patterns and ask yourself, why do I react like that? Why do I raise my voice when I feel disrespected? Why do I seek her validation when I know she's not in her right energy? Why do I say yes when I know I should say no? And that's where the building begins, not in changing her, not in fixing your boss or your family, but in rebuilding yourself from the ground up. You start by mastering your mornings, getting up early, training your body before the world has a chance to shake you. You create non-negotiables, things you do daily no matter what, because they ground you. You learn to speak slowly, not because you're unsure, but because you value your words. You learn to breathe deeply when triggered, not because you're trying to fake calm, but because you've learned to stay present when your instincts want to flee. And slowly, the man you were, the reactive one, the anxious one, the pleaser, starts to die. And in his place, a new man is born, one who doesn't lead with ego, but with presence, one who doesn't try to be followed, but ends up leading anyway because his energy is so grounded that others naturally trust it. Your woman starts looking to you not for instructions, but for security. Your team starts respecting your quiet confidence more than their own anxiety. Your children see in you what no teacher could ever offer. An example of how to stay rooted when life doesn't go your way, because that's real leadership, not just the ability to guide others, but the ability to guide yourself through fire without losing your way. Number 6, calm kills chaos. There's a level of peace that cannot be shaken by noise, by games, by sudden change. And when a man lives from that level, everything around him either aligns or disappears. And the truth is, most of what surrounds you right now, every argument, every fake friend, every emotional spike isn't real connection. It's noise trying to see if it can shake your center, because life doesn't respect your potential. It tests your discipline. And the only men who survive the test are the ones who stop looking for peace in others and start building it within. She doesn't want you to scream back when she pushes you. She doesn't want you to collapse when things go dark. She wants to see if you are who you say you are. If your strength is real, not because you've never been tested, but because you've been tested and chose not to fold. And the reason this calm is so rare is because it must be built one layer at a time while everyone else is chasing shortcuts. It begins the first time you sit in pain without numbing it. It deepens when you hold your ground in a conversation without raising your voice. It hardens when you say no to her, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. It's when you choose to leave a room where your value isn't seen, not to punish anyone, but to protect your peace. And that's when chaos loses its grip on you, when you stop needing to be understood and instead become deeply rooted in understanding yourself. Imagine walking into a situation that used to rattle you, a woman's mood swing, a passive-aggressive jab, a betrayal, and instead of reaction, quieting, you breathe, you observe, you let it pass through you like wind through mountains. And in that moment, you're not just responding differently, you've become different. Your woman starts watching you more. She doesn't know why, but she's drawn to you deeper because now your calm is not a mood, it's your identity. And the world begins to treat you like a man who can't be moved because you've shown it again and again. You've taught your environment that nothing is more valuable to you than your peace, and everything that disrespects it will be met, not with rage, but with quiet exit. And that's terrifying to those who can't control you. That's magnetic to those who've been looking for strength. And most importantly, it's life-changing for you because now you're not just surviving your chaos, you've made it irrelevant. And the man who can do that, he doesn't just attract better, he lives better. He commands more, not by force, but by alignment. Because when a man becomes calm in a world addicted to noise, he becomes untouchable. Number 7, stillness builds long-term attraction. There is a kind of power that doesn't peak on the first date, doesn't fade after the first fight, and doesn't disappear when life tests your grip. And that power, the one that women remember years later, even when you're no longer in their life, is not based on charm, not based on appearance, not based on the temporary excitement of chemistry. It's based on something far deeper. Your ability to remain deeply rooted in who you are over time, through conflict, through change, through resistance. Because short-term attraction is easy. Any man can buy flowers, say the right things, act composed for a few days, or even a few weeks. But what keeps a woman looking at you differently 10 years into a relationship? What makes her respect you when she's angry? What makes her desire you even when life feels heavy? Is your consistency in being the same man she met on day one, but deeper, stronger, more refined? And to reach that, you must stop living in the emotional highs and lows that destroy most men. You must become the man who doesn't peak when things are good and collapse when they're not. You must learn to live from principle, not feeling. To remain who you said you are, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because nothing builds trust like consistency. Nothing builds depth like restraint. And nothing builds lifelong attraction like the man who never has to raise his voice to remind her of who he is. She doesn't need to be impressed. She needs to be anchored. And she doesn't need a man who reacts. She needs a man who holds space, holds truth, holds vision, holds standard. And that kind of man doesn't need to constantly win her over. He simply becomes the space where her feminine can rest without fear. But that space must be earned. It must be carved out of the choices you make when no one is watching, when she's distant and you choose patience over panic, when you're misunderstood and you choose clarity over proving, when you're tested and you choose stillness over scrambling. And these moments are the true test, not the big gestures, not the expensive trips, but the simple, often invisible acts of grounded strength that tell her you're not here to control her. You're here to lead with calm, without ego, without noise. This is the kind of presence that changes how she breathes around you, that makes her want to come closer without you asking, that makes her stop questioning, stop testing, stop resisting, because she sees that nothing about you is temporary. You've become a mountain in her life, not because you demanded it, but because you chose every day to become the man who doesn't just offer stability, he lives it. And this depth, this weight is rare. That's why she stays. That's why she submits. Not out of weakness, but out of a respect so deep it moves her soul, because the man who becomes still over time becomes irresistible, not just in bed, but in presence, not just when things are sweet, but when life gets complicated. And to become that man, you don't need more tactics, you need more truth. You need to stop chasing and start embodying. Start by living in alignment with your values, even when you're tempted. Start by walking away from conversations that disrespect your worth. Start by training your body and mind until your decisions are led by clarity and not impulse. Start by writing down the kind of legacy you want and living like you already carry that weight every time you speak. And above all, know this: short-term attraction is everywhere. But what makes her fall in love again every time she looks at you is the man who became more composed, more grounded, more intentional as the years passed. That's what builds a legacy. That's what raises kings. That's what separates the man she dates from the man she builds a life with. Be that man. If you've made it to this point, you already know this world wasn't built to make you a strong man. It was built to keep you chasing approval, doubting your instincts, softening every edge of your power until you forget who you were meant to be. And if you're tired of living confused, drained, and losing respect every time you try to please, it ends now. The truth is, most men will keep making the same mistakes in dating and relationships for the next 5 years until one day they wake up alone, broke inside, and wondering what happened. But Not you, because now you've seen what they haven't. And that's why the Stoic relationship blueprint for men exists. It's not just an ebook, it's a loaded weapon for the man who's done playing soft, done being manipulated, and ready to finally lead with presence, strength, and authority. This ebook isn't free. It isn't watered down. It's the clearest, rawest truth you've never been told. And it's linked in the comments. Comment the Stoic blueprint right now if you're ready to grab it and build what she's been dying to feel in you but couldn't name. Like this video, subscribe, and help save another man from wasting years in pain, confusion, and silent regret.